What's up guys, Roman from RNS Entertainment, here with another edition of Comic History, where I go over the iconic origins and storylines of all sorts of comic book characters. In this video, we're going to be talking about the rise of Arsenal, a 4-issue storyline following Cry for Justice, where the Justice League is essentially defeated by the supervillain Prometheus, and Roy Harper, who was a member of the Justice League and going by Red Arrow at the time, lost his arm to Prometheus and had his daughter Leon killed in the decimation of Star City. I will probably end up doing a comic history or a comic rants video on Cry for Justice, and a comic history on the following Fall of Green Arrow storyline. But this book essentially follows Roy Harper's descent into darkness and taking back up the mantle of Arsenal while dealing with the fallout of losing his daughter. Rise of Arsenal starts out right before Red Arrow is ambushed by Prometheus, which happened off-panel in Cry for Justice. When he's talking to his daughter Leon before she goes to bed, who's being taken care of by Mia Dearden, the current Speedy, Freddie Freeman, aka Captain Marvel, walks into the room, and it turns out that this is actually Prometheus disguised as Captain Marvel to gain access to the Watchtower. So before Red Arrow knows he's in danger, Prometheus shoves his face into the computer screen, leaving half of his face severely burned, but Red Arrow quickly gains his footing and has already figured out that it's Prometheus, who essentially has a highly advanced tech suit with pre-programmed ways to defeat every member of the Justice League. Prometheus attacks Red Arrow by firing razor-sharp discs and then uses an energy blade with a force field generator shield, breaking his bow in the process, but Roy says that he doesn't need a bow to fight, and references his time as Arsenal previously when he didn't even use one. Prometheus knows that Roy Harper is able to turn anything into a deadly weapon, including his fists, and after being knocked to his knees by Red Arrow, he surprises him by recalling the discs that Roy had avoided, slicing him several times and distracting him long enough for Prometheus to spring up and slice clear through Roy's arm with his energy blade, taking back on the appearance of Captain Marvel as the maimed hero staggers back to the rest of the League. The next thing we see is Roy waking up in a medical bed after the events of Cry for Justice, surrounded by the rest of the Justice League and in excruciating pain, with the burns on his face mostly healed but his arm missing. And first thing, he asks if they got Prometheus for what he had done. Unknown to everyone there, including Roy, Green Arrow had secretly hunted down Prometheus after everything had gone down and murdered him out of revenge for Roy, the destruction of Star City, and the death of Leon, who Roy then realizes is dead, and the looks on the rest of the Justice League's faces speaks volumes. What can they even say to their friend, their ally, after he's just lost every last thing he cares about in the world? After a pained silence, Roy flies into a rage, and while Black Canary attempts to subdue him, she tells him that there was nothing anyone could have done, crying as she stops him and then comforting him as his grief fully sets in. Midnight and Cyborg are already working on a high-tech prosthetic arm for Roy, but Prometheus's technology was laced with flesh-eating bacteria, which causes constant excruciating pain and stops the wound from healing properly. Roy hallucinates his old bandmate Corey from his days addicted to heroin, who died of an overdose shortly after Roy got his life together, and he basically reminds Roy of the glory days and tells him he needs drugs to get through this. Roy eventually wakes up and demands to see his daughter's body, and Midnight offers his condolences along with telling Roy that the flesh-eating bacteria is complicating their attempts to make a cybernetic arm for him. Roy sees his daughter's lifeless body and can tell from the state she's in that her last moments were of terror and struggle, and he breaks down wondering if her last words were calling out to him for help. Roy takes a supply of pain pills from Midnight and walks out into the ruins of Star City, though the pills are ineffective and his missing arm constantly causes him an immense amount of pain. The only thing on his mind is finding Prometheus and exacting revenge. Roy stops at his house and finds crooks looting it, and beats one down before blocking a kick with his stump out of reflex, but uses a world's greatest dad mug to take out the other easily, once again hinting at his return to the Arsenal persona, as he can turn anything into a weapon. Black Canary shows up and asks Roy to come back with her to Star Labs, and he lashes out at her, saying that the entire Justice League should be out looking for Prometheus, not just the speedsters, and when he insists on staying at his home, she wants to stay there with him, but he doesn't want pity, so she leaves him there alone. He takes out some of his anger on a punching bag, completely destroying it and then shoveling down more pain pills before once again hallucinating Corey. Roy is plagued by nightmares of Leon dying and is living in a constant state of agony, with nothing able to subside the pain from his arm or the grief from losing his daughter. He then sees a news broadcast stating that Green Arrow's identity as Oliver Queen has been revealed to the public and that he's been arrested for the murder of Prometheus. I'm actually going to cover the storyline of Green Arrow killing Prometheus and going rogue from the Justice League in the Fall of Green Arrow, so be on the lookout for that. Black Canary shows up intending to break the news to Roy and tells him about Oliver lying to all of them and putting an arrow in Prometheus's head, and Roy is only angry that he didn't get to kill Prometheus himself. He goes to visit Oliver in jail and is angry that Green Arrow took away his revenge, thinking that it would have changed everything for him if he could have killed Prometheus himself. Roy tells Oliver that he's never there for any of them unless it's convenient for him, and that he had been an absentee father to his actual son Connor, he had abandoned Roy in the past, and even with the new Speedy is selective in which moments he chooses to act like a father. Back at Star Labs, Cyborg has worked out a prosthetic that will operate around the infected tissue, but will also have to be attached directly through the damaged areas, causing tremendous pain, but Roy goes through with it and steals another bottle of pain pills on his way out. At Leon's funeral, although Roy is surrounded by the entire Justice League, he feels completely alone, and after hallucinating Leon's coffin banging from the inside, he runs off and downs more pain pills before being confronted by Deathstroke's daughter Ravager, who had been close to Roy and taken care of his daughter before. She tries to comfort Roy, but when Mia Dearden tries to offer her condolences, Roy grabs her by the throat, yelling at her for leaving Leon alone in the midst of the city toppling around them, and also for letting the electrocutioner, who had been working for Prometheus and was the one who actually set off the device that destroyed Star City, be arrested instead of killing him. As Mia breaks down, Dick Grayson, who at this point has taken up the mantle of Batman, and Donna Troy, who were both former Teen Titans with Roy back when he went by Speedy, both try to reach out to him, but he lashes out at them and claims that no one could understand, and that he should never have tried to be both a father and a hero. Alone at his home, Roy reattaches his new arm and tries it out with a bow, to find his aim is all wrong, though after breaking the bow in half, he chucks it directly through the center of the target, showing again that his short time as Red Arrow is over. After downing even more pain pills, Roy is ambushed by Cheshire, the mother of his daughter, who attacks him out of the shadows and blames him for Leon's death. During the fight, Roy utilizes several items from around his home as weapons, including a tennis racket, a razor blade, and an extension cord, and tells Jade that if she wants to blame someone, blame herself. Because while Roy was raising their daughter himself, Cheshire was a terrible mother, whipping her in the face and tying her arms with the extension cord, and it becomes apparent that they're both just taking their anger over their daughter's death out on each other, and when Jade bursts into tears, the fight immediately starts turning into sex. Roy leaves Cheshire in his house and finally takes back on the mantle of Arsenal, taking his anger out on the criminals taking advantage of the destruction in Star City, chucking daggers into them and beating them unconscious. He starts hallucinating Corey again, who keeps telling him that he should be the old Roy Harper again, and that the fix he needs is only going to come from heroin. And feverish and hopeless, Arsenal breaks up a drug deal only to score the heroin for himself, which he does in an alleyway before drifting into a drug-induced vision. He sees Leon alive and well and embraces her before he sees multiple Prometheuses trying to kill his daughter, and he decimates them with his daggers before seeing the electrocutioner, which turns into Dick Grayson as Batman as we finally start to see what's really happening. Roy is surrounded by the bodies of thugs he hallucinated as Prometheus, and what he thought was his daughter is actually a dead cat, who he's just sitting there holding. Still seeing Batman as electrocutioner, Arsenal attacks him with the dagger, with Dick Grayson constantly trying to help his old friend, while Arsenal says that the criminals have gotten the easy way out for too long. No more. Before Batman is finally able to knock him out. Roy wakes up strapped to a table in a facility designed to help supervillains with substance problems, with Black Canary by his side, who tells him what he did and that they have to keep him there until they know he's not going to go on any more heroin-fueled rampages. That night, Roy argues with the hallucination of Corey, saying that they were right to lock him up here, and that he kicked his addiction once, he'll do it again, but is confronted with another hallucination, this time of Leon, still bearing the wounds of her death, which sends Roy on a guilt-ridden explosion of grief, as he thinks to himself how he tried his best to be a father and give her the best life he could, but the hallucination taunts him, calling him a thrill junkie, saying that he was more concerned about running around with Green Arrow and hooking up with women than he was with her, and that he needs to find Electrocutioner and show him how he feels. When the orderlies see that Roy's wound has reopened, they unstrap him and he immediately smashes his lost arm into one of their faces, grabbing the keys with his teeth and freeing himself, bashing the other man's head into the wall and demanding to know where his arm is. Outside of the prison where both Green Arrow and Electrocutioner are being held, Roy muses at the irony of them being locked away together, while noticing how much worse his arm has gotten, and the hallucination of Leon has become a jeering skull on a child's body, with hair still sprouting out that asks him what he's waiting for. Arsenal breaks into the prison and easily dispatches the guards and opens the entire cell block of prisoners, beating them all down and spotting Electrocutioner trying to flee him, but tells him that there's no escape from what he did, while the prison guards decide that the best option is to let Green Arrow out of his cell to help contain things. Green Arrow confronts Arsenal just as he's about to torture and kill Electrocutioner, punching him in the face and diverting his attacks as Electrocutioner tries to escape, but Arsenal chucks a dagger into his leg before Green Arrow grabs one of Arsenal's batons and smashes him in the face with it. A full fight breaks out between Arsenal and Green Arrow, with Arsenal claiming that he passed Oliver in terms of skill years ago, which Green Arrow acknowledges is true. Without a bow, Roy is better than Oliver, but clouded by drugs and anger, Roy doesn't have the clarity or the focus to win. Arsenal didn't come here to fight Green Arrow though, he came here to kill a rat, and Arrow just happened to knock him into a position to do so. Locking Green Arrow in a cell, Arsenal draws his dagger while Electrocutioner pleads for his life, and Oliver makes one last desperate plea. He apologizes for never being there for Roy, but he's here now. The vision of Leon tells Roy to gut Electrocutioner like the pig he is, and Roy simply says, "Anything for you, sunshine," and drives his dagger into Electrocutioner's heart, covering the walls with blood and leaving Green Arrow speechless. Back at his old home, the hallucination of Leon is no longer grotesque, just his daughter, and it reminisces about all the great times they had there. It tries to follow him outside, but Roy turns back and says, "I'm sorry, goodbye, Leon," and burns down the house, moving on with his life. Arsenal becomes a dark, vengeful anti-hero, punishing anyone addicted to the power and control of preying on the weak and powerless. This wraps up The Rise of Arsenal, a very, very dark but extremely good storyline for Roy Harper, cementing his ultimate superhero identity as Arsenal and dealing with a number of issues that most comics wouldn't even touch on. I personally love the Roy Harper character. Out of all the young heroes and sidekicks in the DC universe, his storyline is one of the darkest, but he also overshadows his initial role as a sidekick and forges his own place in the world, becoming a full-fledged and highly developed character. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Check out my other comic history videos and other content on my channel. Be on the lookout for videos on Cry for Justice and the Fall of Green Arrow, which both highly relate to this story. And let me know in the comment section below anything you'd like to see in future videos. Make sure to like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to my gaming channel, RNS Gaming, and take it easy, guys.